Bob was a very simple, unassuming person who didn't toot his own horn and didn't brag about his accomplishments or his life, because he let his actions speak for him.
He's a very humble, modest character. You know, he'd do things a man's just supposed to do, and he wouldn't call attention to it. He's kind of the model of what a man just does.
We're celebrating his life because he loved all of us, and it's the best thing that we can do, celebrate his life rather than mourn him.
He was a very good father. As time went by, both of us, as God worked in our lives and matured us and grew us, we both realized that family was very, very important. And if we failed with our children and raising them, then everything else was nothing. And as God grew us and our faith grew, and as God grew Bob and his faith grew, he realized that God was first. God came first. Because Bob realized that when you put God at the top, God takes care of your family and your job and everything else.
Oh yeah, he's a great grandpa. Obviously I lived at home when I had Bailey, and he would rock him every night, and he gave him his little sheep when he was born. He went down to the hospital gift shop and got him a little lamb. And then when Ashley was born, he got her one too. He's a little dirty all the wear from being loved. And so Ashley got one. And then when Candace was born, he went to find one for her, but they had stopped making it, so she got a little rabbit. But he's always spending time with the grandkids, and he always had to be the first one to take them in the pool and to teach them how to swim. And Bailey was born in January, and he could not wait until April to, take him in the pool. So this little baby is just swimming in the pool with him. And of course, when the girls were born, we lived in California, but when, we would come here, that was his thing, take them in the pool. Or he'd sit at his computer with them on his lap listening to music.
What's Bailey doing?
Pagoda.
That's yours. It's yours. Set. Set.
I still.
There. Who's that?
Cake. Show Grandpa. Is that your cake? Who made your cake?
Grandpa, do you see my kitty pajamas?
Huh?
Do you see my kitty pajamas?
Uh-huh.
Left, you circle left, left, left. Now circle right, the other way back. Circle right, keep on going, don't you stop. Now circle till you're home, keep on going around you go.
Grandpa with his new granddaughter Candace, just meeting her for the first time. What are you doing?
He was kind of a father figure in Bailey's life. He was, the man figure in Bailey's life, and he's one of the reasons that, one of the people that taught Bailey how to be a man and a good man. And there's really no bad qualities that he had that the kids can carry on. That's nothing but good. So if they take anything, it'll be a good quality. He called him Bubba Louie. That was Bubba Louie. Hey, Bubba. In fact, that's what Bailey said when he passed away, is He wrote something really nice on Facebook saying, now I'm never going to hear him say Bubba again. But he was very proud of Bailey that he was in the Marines. He's very, very proud. And actually, on October 1st, Bailey made sergeant. And he would have been very, very proud of that. So when Bailey was a baby, my dad was reading him the Limbaugh letter, and there's a picture of Hillary Clinton, and my dad pointed to it and said, this lady's a witch. And Bailey started crying. So that was pretty cute.
The Limbaugh letter. See? Good man. Right? Good guy. Now let's see if we can find some bad guys in here. Name it. Name it. Aha. There's one right there. Jesse Jackson. Panetta. The idiot that's our temporary president. Patsy Schroeder. Gephardt. And there's the witch right there. They got a muzzle on her now, so she can't screw things up for Bubba. Right?
Yeah, he was quite the handyman. He learned carpentry at a young age, probably watching his dad, who wasn't bad. And Andrea found pictures and stuff and reminded all of us that he built Scott and Andrea and their friends out in our backyard a beautiful playhouse, like a fort. We didn't have a tree to put it in, but he built them a house where they could go to the top of it and using a rope or whatever, and some people would call it a playhouse, but our kids enjoyed it very much.
Bob Phillips, if you don't turn around and look at me, I won't go away. Hey Bob, look at me.
He was smart, very smart. Hard worker, and he was giving. All I had to do was call him and say, hey, my house is flooding, and okay, I'll be right there. He was the computer guy, the mechanic, the builder. My house flooded last year, and even though he was sick, he still came over and helped me chop back it out and dump it out.
He worked out in the garage. He'd work out in the garage a lot. He loved woodworking. He's got some workbenches that we still have in the garage to this day that he made that are just awesome. I mean, they're big, heavy workbenches that he made from scratch. He just started woodworking one day and put together these awesome heavy benches. He'd used them for years. He made that stuff out of scratch. So he spent a lot of time he loved doing his woodworking. When I was living in El Paso, I lived in El Paso from 04 until about 08, and I had like a brownstone over in Sunset Heights. And, I learned early on, you always keep Guinness in the fridge, because he'd just drop in, right? Like, he'd come over and he'd come over and be like, hey, I heard your AC was having a hard time. AC was working fine, okay? But that's what he would tell me. I'm going to go over to Scott's house and check, because I heard there's a problem. So he'd come over and be like, hey, I heard your fridge ain't working right. Oh, no, I think the fridge is working okay. He'd be like, oh, okay. And then he'd always say, so you got a cold one? You got a cold one? Sure do. Being Yankee and old school, he couldn't say, hey, I just want to come over and have a beer with my son. But hey, I know what it meant.
I think what happened, I think that he stopped at the 7-Eleven around the corner, because that, well before cell phones, obviously. And he called, and so we ran out there. And I remember standing outside and waiting for him, going, oh, and then there he is. And he comes around the corner, and my brother and I are like, yay! And we just run over and probably boxed each other as to who was going to get in the car first, because it was only a 2-seater. But when he brought it home brand new, I remember that day, yeah.
Here comes Daddy with his new toy.
With his new teacher toy. Yep, you're right.
loved the American-made cars. He didn't like Jap cars. And he refused, he told me if I ever got a Jap car, he wouldn't work on it. No oil changes, no brakes, nothing. But he loved his Corvettes. He always wanted a Corvette. I think like the 67 or 68 Corvette, something like that. He always wanted one. And of course the old classics like the Bel Airs and the 67 Chevys and stuff like that. Yeah. There's pictures of him riding dirt bikes and in dirt races, and he was not an adrenaline junkie, but he really liked the excitement and the thrills. Oh yeah, at the amusement parks, he was always the one that's going to go on the roller coaster with you. Always. My mom wouldn't go on the roller coasters, but it was, okay, Dad, which one are we going to go on first? And so that was cool.
We'd work on the car together. We had this terrible MG, this '79 MG. It was a real piece of junk. And my senior year, we, as a kind of father-son project, I needed a car, and it was just kind of sitting in the front yard. So we tore it down, took everything off it, sent it off to be painted, and then when it came back, we built it all back up again, put everything on, and so I drove that around my senior year of high school. And I went off to college, and I came back a year later, and I was driving home from work, and I ran it without oil and killed the engine. So we tried to fix it after that, but it required some parts they just didn't have in El Paso anymore. So we ended up selling it. But that was a good memory there. We spent a lot of time working on that car, and I hadn't really worked on cars much before then, and I spent a lot of time under there, hoisting the transmission and working with wrenches and stuff like that. So it kind of got me into cars more. I'm still not the mechanic he was, but I can turn a wrench and kind of figure stuff out. So that was something that was really stuck with me a long time. You would never know that he didn't go to A&M because he was so proud to be there by proxy. He enjoyed the traditions. He liked all the traditions that would go on at the football games and stuff. He liked a lot of that. The A&M and Texas don't play annually anymore. I think they stopped in 2011, but he was there for that game, and so we went to tailgates and just had a grand time. I think after I went to because he later on in his career he started doing the computers for several maquilas over in Mexico, and I noticed that after I went to A&M, he started having a lot more business in McAllen than he had before. So I think he started volunteering for more of the McAllen trips just as an excuse to kind of come through College Station on his way down. The thing about my dad was, he was an old school Yankee, man. Northerner and all that. And the thing about it was he had a way about him that, at times it was like, all business, get to the point, but he had a very wily, subtle sense of humor. And the thing about him was you never saw him sweat. That's the thing about him, is that, a situation would happen, and he was always calm in the face of adversity, and he'd think things through, and he'd come up with a solution, and he'd fix things. And I got a lot of that from him. The when things are just going wrong, he was always the guy that would keep us, keep a clear head.
I actually saw his relationship with God grow as he did start going to church and accepting religion more. So it was a kind of cool side of him that we got to see that, we didn't see growing up. And then when he actually got behind the scenes with all the electronics and all the music and all the background, the behind the scenes stuff, that's really what piqued his interest. And maybe that was God's way of calling him into the church, was by having the cool stuff that he could play with and all the videos that he could make and whatnot. And that was his relationship, with the church. And it's really cool that the church welcomed him in and let him do media.
In my view, he interacted with the church was through service. If something happened, he's the one going to the person to help him. So I think it was more applicable to what the scriptures say to do. Which I guess you could say he took from the Bible the lessons that it was meant to teach. I mean, he had a humble nature about him. I think he had the heart of a mediator. I think that would have, if he didn't go into IT, that might have been his calling, was doing mediation or something like that, because he could go to both sides and be like, come on, and kind of get people talking, So I think that would have been something he would have been good at.
He helped Marge Sturdy. She would never have been able to do as much as she did on the computer, I think, if it hadn't been for Bob. Whenever she had a problem, he was right there, getting her computer back online, and he helped everybody.
Here's your new computer. My what?
Your new computer, Marge. Everybody chipped in that we talked to that wanted to be a part of this. So you've got a new computer.
No kidding. Windows 7.
No kidding.
I can't believe that.
Pretty cool, huh?
What kind?
An amazing thing happened when we got Mikey. I already thought that our relationship was pretty good, but when Mikey came into our world and we adopted him from a shelter, Bob and I really started laughing more together at Mikey's antics. It was almost like every day was the Mikey show. Mikey had a love for water, not for baths, mind you. But the biggest thing that Mikey liked was the water pump on the pool. When Mikey came out, he'd run right to that pump. He'd get right up there expectantly, and he would want Bob to, it was like, here I am, let me have it. It was just phenomenal. And Bob just couldn't wait to show somebody, hey, you want to see something funny? Let me show you something. And he'd show Mikey off and turn that pump on.
Let him get closer because he's jumping out of the frame.
Ira Hayes, call him drunken Ira Hayes.
We were married 43 years, and one day we were sitting there, and I turned and I looked at him, and I couldn't believe when he looked back at me, he smiled at me. We were at home, we were in the trailer, and I thought, my goodness, that's the most beautiful smile I have ever seen. When did he ever get that smile? I've never seen him smile that way, that beautiful, beautiful way. And I even asked him, when did you get that smile? I've never seen that smile. It's beautiful. And I said, let me get my camera. Don't move. Let me get my camera. And I'd run, and I'd find my camera, and I'd come back, and I'd say, okay. And I could take 5 pictures, 10 pictures, 15 pictures, but I wouldn't capture that same smile. And every time then, a few days, a few weeks later, I'd look, and there was that smile again, and I'd try to capture it again. And I wasn't able to truly capture it 100%. And it was so beautiful. When I asked him, where'd you get that smile? He said, I don't know. Anyway, we celebrate Bob's life because he lived it to the fullest. He wasn't just a taker. He was a giver. He gave back. And he touched so many people, and he was loved by so many people. And that's why we need to celebrate his life. That's why I want to write a book about our journey with leukemia and about him, because it's relevant, it's right to do so, and it would be a book that would inspire other people. And this whole celebration of life and this whole 2 memorial services in addition is a tribute and the last thing that we can do for Bob, to honor him in that way.
By golly, I'll tell you, he had more talent in his little fingers than most people I know. And he helped Bob Dockendorf out at the War Eagles Air Museum once I introduced them. And so we gave him the 25-cent tour. And before we were through, he wanted to know how he could get associated with War Eagles. So I told him, for $10 you can have a membership and then we'll put you to work, which is what we did. And he did an outstanding job on our aircraft recognition models that are set up in a cabinet on the main floor at War Eagles. And I must say, I was so enthused with him, and we've managed to get some very good docents out there. And Bob was right near the top, I'll tell you. And always willing. I never heard a word out of him to the negative, but always willing to be of help out there. We're missing him greatly. He and I struck up a very good friendship. He was just an outstanding individual. I can't emphasize that enough. We truly miss him, truly miss him.
I met Bob Phillips a couple of years ago, and that couple of years ago has gone very fast, but yet it seems like we've accomplished so much together that it seems like longer than 2 years. We talked a lot, and Bob's was just a wonderful, pleasant guy to talk to and visit with. And then we got down to business. I asked Bob what he wanted to do with a volunteer position with us, and we talked primarily about 2 needs. We needed somebody to really help organize our library. We have thousands of books up there that needed to be categorized and sorted, and we had somewhat of a system, but we needed to really solidify some organization in the library. And he did that, did it very well. When he got the library straightened out, we gave him another project that you'll see a little bit about, and that's our aircraft recognition models. So Bob figured out a way to use the least square footage that we could on the floor and build a really nice display, and we're super proud about that, and put together a wonderful story called Friend or Foe that I think you'll see here too. Oh, he was persistent, he really was. He never gave up. He was persistent and professional and polite and friendly. He was a gift to us to teach us how to handle a lot of things and how to be more patient and how to do a truly professional job. He did that, and we're going to miss him dearly.
He started out with a guy at church, Frank Harrison, saying, Bob, I belong to the War Eagles Museum. Why don't you come there sometime with me and let me show you around? And so Bob said, okay. And Bob went. And it was love at first sight, not just with Bob and the War Eagles Museum, but with them. He was welcomed and liked right from day one. They just, it was phenomenal, the way they took to one another. He went from going 1 day a week to 2 days a week and sometimes 3 days a week. He loved their luncheons. He loved the people. He just got to know everybody and just took to it like a duck takes to water.
He loved the War Eagles. He was so proud when they gave him that jacket and his name tag. And I remember my brother came to visit, and they had brought in some kind of plane. It was a huge cargo plane with a little bubble on the bottom. And my brother came, and my dad was just so proud to show us all around the museum and introduce us to all of the people that he had met there. And he really enjoyed that place.
One of his passions was history. You know, always watched the History Channel. I mean, and always was reading. When he was in the hospital at times, there's a lot of times he just lay there and couldn't really do anything while he was getting his treatments. And so I gave him my audiobook subscription. I gave him a login to my Audible, and so he started downloading, all these various history books. He listened to them for hours. And so the War Eagles kind of tied into that. I mean, the War Eagles has classic planes, classic cars, two things he really liked. So volunteering at War Eagles was kind of a perfect fit for him, and it appealed to his meticulous nature.